Hey everybody, welcome back to Video. So today I got a fun and exciting episode for you guys this Friday because about 6 months ago I asked people if you wanted to see a whole tour of my Hyper Neo Geo full set collection, and everyone pretty much said yes, and it took me forever to shoot this. The only reason I did it was because I'm going through an arcade storage closet reorganization, and it was really easy to get all this stuff out. So we're going to be taking a look at the entirety of my Hyper Neo Geo full set collection, talking about the games and just how much I love collecting this hardware. For you to find involved, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But I've been collecting Neo Geo and Hyper Neo Geo stuff for a long time now, probably close to 20 years, and that's just because I saw it in arcades back in the day, fell in love with it, and decided one day I would try to collect it for myself, and this took about 10 years to get everything going on. Now off the top, my favorite game by far on the Hyper Neo Geo has got to be Beast Buster Second Nightmare. I absolutely love the light gun genre. I love a good horror shooting game, so this has everything I need, and this is probably the hardest game to find for the Hyper Neo Geo outside of one of the Samurai Showdowns. But this game just does absolutely everything right in my opinion. It's the House of the Dead on steroids. The violence is dialed up to 11. All of the zombies just basically blow apart. You'll see spines, you'll see intestines, you'll see their hearts and brains fly around the screen. This just goes hard in every way, shape, or form as far as the horror aspect is concerned. Kind of feels like the closest you're going to get to playing a Dawn of the Dead style arcade game. And this is just why I love the Hyper Neo Geo so much. I played this game back in 2006 in Aspen at a hotel when I was a coach at X Games, and I fell in love with it. I figured one day I'd find it and purchase it, and I was able to do just that. And I was able to find a North American release, although it is just re-stickered. Underneath this is the Japanese release sticker. SNK was famous for doing this back in the day. Now moving on to another rare and hard to find game, this is Offbeat Racer, and this works on a different style than the rest of the games do as far as the I/O is concerned. So it took a long time to hunt down the I/O for this. The motherboard is the same across all of the games. It is the I/O board that basically changes the way you interact with the game control wise, and you do need the proper I/O with the proper BIOS to be able to play the fighting games, the driving games, and the one light gun game, Beast Busters. These aren't the best games in the world. Somebody like Sega or Namco with something like their racing games, we're definitely beating SNK, but that doesn't mean they are not fun. And if you're going for a full set, you definitely have to get the two racing games as well. But Offbeat Racer is a good time. It's a quality game. It's like a B tier racing effort, and it is a great thing to enjoy in your home collection. I don't know if I would go out of my way to collect these now. I got them a long time ago and they were much cheaper, and these games have definitely jumped up a ton in value. But I remember seeing this in the arcades at a movie theater back in the day as well. Threw a couple quarters into it, had a good time, and of course now it's in my collection. But if you collect arcade boards and not the cabinets, trying to do something like play these racing games requires a full custom setup for a wheel and pedal set that is modified into the actual arcade board. So this is the Japanese variant. It's serial number 28, so there was 27 before this one, and I have no idea how many after it. This is definitely a used copy. The sticker is a little bit beat up, but otherwise happy to have it in my collection and another awesome SNK game. Now moving on to Samurai Shodown 2, this is the second release for the Hyper Neo Geo, and you're going to see here it's 4807, and it is a matching set. And this is a new old stock set. I purchased this a long time ago, and it was noted to be never used in an arcade, and you can definitely tell from the completeness here and the fact that none of the artwork or the move strips have been used whatsoever. This has never seen an actual arcade. It must have just been something SNK had hanging around that did not sell, because the Hyper Neo Geo 64 was not a success at the arcades like the Neo Geo was. The MVS absolutely destroyed it in arcades. The Hyper Neo Geo 64 tripped, fell flat on its face, and broke its teeth out basically from day one. But that meant back in the day, after this hardware failed and these games failed, you could pick up new old stock kits for basically the cost of a couple large cheese pizzas today. Definitely is not the case anymore, and I'm glad that I picked a lot of this stuff up a very long time ago. And you can just tell from this cartridge, I have used it in my system, so it's not new old stock anymore. It has seen power, but I've been very careful not to break it too much, although I am pretty clumsy and I do have a tendency to drop things sometimes. I've kept it pretty fresh. And I will say Samurai Shodown 64 2, not my favorite favorite game on the Hyper Neo Geo. It's probably my least favorite if I'm being honest. It is a fun, competent fighting game, but I enjoy the original Samurai Shodown 64 much more than I do this game. It just kind of cheaps out on the backgrounds and kind of feels like a quick conversion of the first game into a new title, trying to get something better onto the market, because the reception for the original game was not great, so they definitely moved on and tried to do something a little bit different. I'm not saying it's a bad game in any way, shape, or form. I still do enjoy playing it, but compared to all the other games on the Hyper Neo Geo 64, this one just never catches my attention the same way. I'll play it once, maybe every couple years, but it's not something that I feel like taking out of the closet all that often and playing. But it is fun to have all of the art for this, and you can see here, this is how it would have been packed into the kit boxes back in the day, and it is still in that original shape. One of these days I'll probably frame some of these posters for my arcade office wall, but right now I just keep them in the boxes because honestly, all of the Japanese artwork is a non-standard frame size in North America, so it can be very difficult to find them. Now, speaking of the Hyper Neo Geo and Samurai Shodown 64, this is the one known prototype of any game on the Hyper Neo Geo in and of itself. I got this from another person. It was found in a field on a pallet under a tree and tarps, and you can definitely see the evidence of that. There's a tiny bit of rust and some scratches, but that's all part of the story of this game. Now, moving back to a video I shot some years ago when I actually opened this thing up, I am still working on dumping this. I'm just trying to find the time to get the pinout 100% correct and find the mating parts so I can start dumping the ROMs on this, because there's 96 individual chips I need to dump correctly as to not damage this board, and that is definitely taking a lot of research. But of course, like everything else I've given away for free on the channel, file and game wise, I will do this one day, I assure you of that. I've had a couple of questions about when that will be. As soon as I figure it out, and if you have any thoughts or know anyone in Chicago that might be able to help with this, please do let me know. But it's not the type of thing I want to put in a box and ship across the country or across the world if I can avoid it. And I have uploaded complete playthroughs of all of the characters in the beta, so everything visually is 100% preserved. I just want to get this ROM off the board so people in MAME can kind of work on it and try to get one more game booting. And I have sent some of the MAME people some information and findings from these original games, and luckily MAME Hayes, the driver developer on the Hyper Neo Geo side of things, was able to get Buriki One's attract sequence much more buttoned up after getting some footage of that I sent to him, so that he could understand the original machine behavior, because that is very important. But moving over to something like Wild Ambition here, this is probably my favorite standard fighting game on the Hyper Neo Geo 64. This is a kit with matching serial numbers, and while I don't really care if the serial numbers match, I don't care about the value of these things, it always is fun to have those matching serials if you can get them, but I never pay any more money for them. It really doesn't matter too much to me. And this is another new old stock kit. It's going to have all of the artwork, all of the move strips, all of the flyers in the box along with the manual. And again, it was just one of those things. Back in the day, SNK made a lot of copies of these games and they were not succeeding in the arcades, so they ended up with a lot of extras that ended up on the open market. I think I paid maybe $75 shipped for this when I purchased it forever ago, and because I don't have a cabinet and I just kind of leave these things fresh, they sit in the box where I got them from. Maybe one day I will build a Hyper Neo Geo 64 cabinet and do some artwork on one of these just to get it to its original condition, but for the time being, they're just kind of hanging out here waiting to go into a cabinet one day when I have more space. And I do love that all of the kits come with all of this artwork. Now, I don't have kits for every single game. The racing games I have no artwork for, and Buriki One I am missing a box on, and as far as Beastbuster Second Nightmare is concerned, that never came in a kit because it was a dedicated cabinet. But Fatal Fury Wild Ambition is just a ton of fun. If you've played this on the PlayStation 1 and you didn't enjoy it, I totally understand that. It is a very inferior port to the arcade original. And this type of game, luckily all of these things do play in MAME. The sound is not correct, but otherwise the performance is good enough for you to play them, experience them, and enjoy them. But you're honestly probably not going to see a Hyper Neo Geo 64 fighting game in many arcades in North America. I believe Galloping Ghost has one set up, but otherwise, if you see a Hyper Neo Geo cabinet in the US, definitely play it and definitely tell me where it was, because I would just be curious to hear about that. But Fatal Fury Wild Ambition, it is a totally awesome game, and another poster I want to get on my office wall at some point in time. But honestly, I don't really decorate my house with that much of my gaming stuff. You would be hard pressed if you just walked in to know I even collected arcade games or any sort of games. It is a very hidden collection. Now taking a look at Warrior's Rage here, this is a box. It doesn't match. I'm not showing you the top because it does have an address on it. This is where I keep my US Samurai Shodown 64 cartridge. This is another very difficult cart to find, and this is definitely better in my opinion than Samurai Shodown 64 2. I just don't have an original art kit for this game. I have some of this stuff, some of it's matching, some of it's used, but this is one. Trying to find the full set is very difficult. But this one definitely does it for me a lot more than the second game in the franchise on the Hyper. You get full 3D range of motion, you just get more character and charm, you get better backgrounds. This is what SNK seemed to put all their time into, and when fans weren't as into this full 3D motion, they made the second game keeping it on a 2D plane with 3D characters, and it seems like a lot of the artwork and other things they developed were a quick turn and burn game to try to get something new onto the market. Now of course I am just presuming that that's kind of how I feel what's going on here. And if you've never played this game before, definitely take it from me. It is worth your time, at least in MAME, to check out. And again, if you ever see an original arcade cabinet, definitely throw some quarters in. It is exceedingly rare. Now the other game on the Hyper Neo Geo 64 that's racing based is going to be Round Trip RV. This is the lesser of the two games in my opinion. It's less arcadey, it's still a lot of fun, but it's just one of those things. I play it every couple of years just to refresh myself on what it feels like and to kind of sit down for 30 minutes and enjoy it. But it's nothing that I'm going to declare a hidden gem. This is another cheap pickup. I think it was like $40 for the cartridge. I got it off Yahoo Auctions Japan a ton of time ago. That the heavy hitter in my opinion is definitely Buriki One. This is one of the most interesting, intriguing, and different fighting games that you've ever played because the arcade stick is actually how you put your movements in and the buttons move you forward and backwards. It takes a couple hours to 100% understand how to control the game, but when it clicks, it 100% clicks, and it's kind of SNK at their most experimental. This is just a hidden gem game 7 days out of the week and twice on Sunday, and you definitely have to play this somewhere. You can play it in MAME, but definitely make sure you get the controls done correctly. Use an analog stick, use a D-pad for the actual move inputs, and use 2 buttons for the forward and backward motion, or else you're not really going to understand how Buriki One works and why it was so interesting and intriguing. But this one, hidden gem, I stand by that. It's what I believe. And I also have the original North American artwork for this, and it's kind of confusing as to whether or not this actually came out in the US. I've never really seen a photo of a full kit, so maybe it was on location test, but I do have the full art kit for the Japanese version. I just do not have the actual shipping box, and honestly that's totally fine. If I find one to buy, I might offer like 20 bucks tops. It might go for hundreds. That's just not really how I like to collect. But having all the artwork means that if I ever do get a cabinet for this game, I can put the artwork on top and basically treat it like it is a full kit, even if I am missing the cardboard box. And I think I found this again on Yahoo Auctions Japan, maybe for like $25. The shipping may have actually been more expensive than actually buying these items, because when you were looking for them back in the day, you could actually find them relatively cheaply. Unfortunately today that's basically completely gone by the wayside. And I even have the original shipping box for my Mark II Hyper Neo Geo 64 motherboard. There's 2 revisions, the first one and the second one. This one has the audio off the JAMA Edge, and you also have a stereo connector. Both are good, but the second revision is more coveted. And I do have that Samurai Shodown 64 US move strip. This was taken off a cabinet, someone sent it to me for free. It's not the greatest condition, but I keep it around. And I have the original new old stock poster for that, as well as all of the kit contents here. So I'm close to a full kit. I'm just missing the cardboard box and a few other items, but I do like these little bits of ephemera here. You kind of get them every once in a while when you collect arcade stuff. This is what would be in the original kit box when an arcade operator bought a copy of Samurai Shodown 64. It'll kind of give you the listing of everything that would be here, so you know how complete it is or not complete it is. And I also have the North American manual for the Hyper Neo Geo 64, as well as the Samurai Shodown 64 English manual. And the paper stuff, it's fun to have. I put it in a binder. I don't really take it out that much. It usually just comes with these sort of purchases, and I keep it around just kind of for nostalgia reasons. If anyone ever needs a scan of this stuff to repair something or understand, I will scan it and send it off to them. Now something I really need to get into an actual frame that I've never managed to find the right size frame for yet is an original Beastbuster Second Nightmare poster that would have been distributed back in the day by SNK. I can't even remember how I ended up with this thing. It has been in my arcade closet forever, and it's definitely something I need to get into a frame before I end up knocking it in some strange manner and damaging it. That does happen sometimes when you have all this stuff. I do the best I can. I've also got original marquees for Samurai Shodown 64, so if I did want to put this into a generic cabinet, this would be for North America. I do have the marquee for this game, which I am super stoked about. One day I will get it in a cabinet. And I also, of course, have a marquee for Beastbuster Second Nightmare because, again, this is one of my favorite SNK games ever made. I was able to pick these up cheaply maybe 3-4 years ago, and I figured why the hell not. Honestly, they were so cheap. I picked up a second one as well because you can never have too much backup artwork when it comes to collecting these sort of things. One of those things, $5 extra, why the hell not? But that is my Hyper Neo Geo 64 collection. I am probably foolish beyond belief for spending all the time that it took to get all this stuff into my collection, but I just honestly have a nostalgic spot for SNK and their 3D work back in the day, because I traveled a lot for work, for skiing for many years, and these games always seem to show up in ski resort hotels, lobbies, lodges, stuff like that. So I just kind of grew attached to it, and one day I figured, hey, let's see how much I can collect, and this is what I got. Short of that, we're done. Bye-bye.